Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Senor Nerd Podcast. I have here with me Ramon.
Hey, what's up?
Hey Ramon, how you doing, man? So today, next week, but we're here to just talk about Attack on Titan and talk about some of these like past seasons, kind of like show our love for it, man. Because I know when you first started watching the anime, Attack on Titan was one of the first ones that I kind of told you, like, hey, if you're gonna do this journey with anime, like, go ahead and watch this show because I think you really enjoy it. So I kind of want to hear your thoughts about what you think about this show and what it kind of means to you.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And yeah, no kidding. The final freaking season part for the longest. It just keeps getting elongated. No, yeah, man. This is actually, it's funny that you mentioned obviously this was one of the first ones. It definitely was. I mean, again, I mentioned in the show previous times like that I just really because of grad school and everything I was doing at the time, I just didn't get a chance to watch a lot of TV. And then eventually with the streaming channels and being able to binge stuff, it became easier and easier. And I do believe this was the first anime that I revisited, like as a, start watching it for real, like from beginning to like where it was available. So yeah, I do definitely credit you for, suggesting this one and then getting started in that journey because definitely became one of my favorite I think just shows and stories all together. And, again, I'm a big movie watcher. I love my stories. I love just kind of, hearing these things really develop into like whether it's character development, like, great stories and then some crazy twists. This had a little bit of it all, man. Like I remember watching the very first episode and right away wanted to text you and be like, dude, what the heck did you have me watching? This is awesome. So, definitely makes an impression. And if you guys haven't seen it, I think that's all you got to do is just watch one or two episodes and you'll get hooked just enough to like continue to explore what it is about.
Dude, I remember again going back to like 2013. I think there was already 5 episodes out at the time when I started watching this, and it was on Hulu. And I'm like, okay, this seems to be getting a lot of people responding to it. That maybe like on social media, I was seeing articles about it. So I'm like, let me start watching this show. And dude, the first 5 episodes, I remember they were so freaking insane that I'm like, what, like, I'm gonna cuss. Like, what the fuck am I watching? Like, what is this going on? Like, there's giants. There's all these, Titans, what they're called. There's like a giant one knocking out of the front door. There's an armored Titan. Like, I didn't know, like, what to think of this show. Cause I think one of the things that really caught me off guard, cause, this is probably like around the time we were probably watching Game of Thrones. And, I watch a lot of anime, Ramon. I mean, you know this. And
Absolutely.
I can tell you in a lot of it's very rare for an anime to like kill off people like left and right. And that's what really surprised me about this show. That's like you start watching it and like people are like dying, guts are like being split open, Titans are eating people. And I'm like, who the hell is like the main character in this? Because I think even at the time when the show started, like, we're following kind of Eren's journey throughout it. And like I remember it got to the point where like Eren got killed within the first spoilers. There's gonna be a lot of heavy spoilers, but Eren gets
of course. We're revisiting like 10 years of like a TV show. Yeah.
No, and I mean I'm even gonna talk about some of like maybe what could happen in the future. But yeah, like I remember Eren getting eaten by a Titan, and I'm like, okay, like I thought I was following his journey, and all of a sudden like he's possibly dead. And I just like it blew my mind, just like again being something new, not knowing what I was watching, really didn't know where this journey was going to be going. But, I kept up with it, man. Like, I think I've been a fan since the first season, and I've been on top of it. Every time there's a new season comes out, I'm right away watching it. I've read the manga, which I want to talk a little bit about that later on. But yeah, so that's where I kind of like fell in love with Attack on Titan, just from the very beginning.
And I love that too, because like you kind of propelled me towards like kind of keeping up with it as well. Not that it was difficult. It's just like I said, really good story. I mean, just compared to like what you hear when you think of like anime or when people mention anime and, you always want to kind of think of kind of the more sillier anime or the stuff that just, has some stories that are a little bit more loose fitting. Like you said, not a lot of death, not a lot of like heavier topics of like, we could definitely discuss some really depressing shit. But to this point, I think this was the first one that, like you said, started with a lot of gore, started with the very heavy subject matter that was a mystery, and I think that's something that I really liked about it. I mean, I think the first impression of it and the thing that made the thing that made the biggest first impression on me was right away seeing the freaking Titans, right? Like seeing these crazy, goofy looking, naked humans.
The way they run.
The way they run, their body gestures. You had, obviously, eventually we'll talk about the smiling Titan or the smiling giant, but like, you had ones that were frowning, you had ones that had like bigger heads than others, like ones that would run with their heads like backwards because their heads were so big. And that idea was just so lucrative to me from the beginning because I'm like, well, who are these people, right? Like obviously they're humanoid, and you kind of knew there was a story there right from the beginning, and I think something like right away you wanted to explore, and then yes, what like almost one of the first episodes, like Eren's mom gets eaten up like by the Smiling Titan like right away, and you're like, holy crap, like. You know, like for you being introduced to a couple new characters, and then already you start with tragedy. It was just
But
that perfect mixture of like,
no, and I kind of want to stop you right there because I want to talk about the brilliance of this show. And
yeah,
you know, I know you're not really like on the Reddit or on the Twitter, Ramon, but believe it or not, there's people that hate this show, and I think they hate it not because it's a bad
why?
show,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
because of how popular it is and how much everybody loves it. So I think for the
yeah.
1,000 people that like love this show, you might have like a small minority of like 50 people that really hate it just because of how popular. Which to me that sounds kind of crazy. You're gonna hate something just because it's so popular, but just to like talk about the brilliance of Attack on Titan, because I do think it's a very brilliant show. When you talk, you know, you talked about the Smiling Titan eating Eren's mom. Like I would have never had guessed that, you know, looking forward, in reality, that was like Eren's stepmother, and there was like a whole reason why she was attracted to like that house and why,
Yeah.
you know, the mom got in. So again, to me, that's like the stuff that makes me love the show. Like knowing now that like, crap, like I never would have guessed that like that Titan had a purpose. And when you do find out the purpose and why, you know, she was created and why, like it's to me, that's what makes this show again, like really brilliant to me. And it's something that like, you know, not saying other animes aren't doing that kind of level, but this one
Oh
definitely to me like
yeah.
stepped up the story.
It definitely had the layers, man, the layers of intensity like that. Like again, you saw that first scene of, I mean, you saw that scene of that Titan eating Eren's mother. There's no way you would have known, right, that it was gonna ultimately be his dad's ex-wife. There's no way of like knowing that he would have ran into her later on, and you know had that initial when he stopped her like grab, and then that caused like that rumbling that first time. So you know it's sweet to have something like it's crazy. It's just a random Titan that you see in the like first few episodes, and you're like, hey, this is one of many that you have running around eating people, and it becomes so significant later on. Like that shows kind of the gravity of the show, that it's definitely built in layers. And I think it's true because, like, I mean, it's true as you go on throughout the show, it gets heavier and heavier with content, man. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess we could just go from there. Like, you know, obviously, so eventually, you know, obviously that happens, so it sets up the story with Eren. You meet people like,
Mikasa.
yeah, like she's great, right? And then even later on too, you realize who she really is, a sense of like who her family, who her last
Yeah.
name belongs to, and dude, everything. I feel like I'm still watching it now, and I'm still finding things out from like back in the beginning of the show, and it's great because yeah, sometimes you do have to go back and look it up if you haven't watched it all consistently, like all together. But dude, it's just so rewarding, and I feel like at this point, right, like we're so close to the end. Sadly, I think the end's been spoiled to me already, but at the same
Mhm.
time, like, you know, I'm a fan of the animation. That's another thing too, right? You know, we're talking about animation, we're talking about these anime cartoons that you gotta love how people move. You gotta love the style, how creepy the Titans are, especially when you start introducing like the actual the nine like Titans, the armored Titan, the attack Titan, all those, and they're just so fucking cool.
But,
um, yeah,
but
everything
like,
about it. Yeah,
well, like something about the show that like right away gets you is like you're not really sure what kind of time period this is or what kind of world
mm,
this is, just because again they seem like they're living very like old fashioned ways, but then they have this technology with the gear that's able to like they able to
the
like kind of
ODM
like
gear. Yeah,
the ODM gear where they're able to like travel, not like Spider-Man, but they're able to hook themselves and like throw themselves at like really fast speed and maneuver themselves to be able to kill the Titans. So you're kind of thinking like, okay, this is kind of interesting. It's a very medieval kind of town, but they do have this technology. And this is kind of where I want to say, I want to talk a little bit about like the manga because I have read it all. So like you can't really
yeah,
spoil anything to me because I know how the show ends.
yeah,
But you know, I remember when the show wasn't, the new seasons weren't really happening like as fast as I wanted them to be. Like eventually, I'm like, okay, you know, like I really want to
yeah.
know what's in that basement of Eren's dad. So I remember like I just picked like a random chapter, like 100 and something, and I remember reading that chapter and like I had no idea what was going on, Ramon. I'm like, there's blimps, there's like a jaw titan that I've
Oh,
never
won't take it
seen.
too Marley. Yeah,
There's like a vocal character that I don't know who the hell this is. Like I don't know like what is going on. So like I kind of like all of a sudden like got almost like a shock feeling, and I'm like I had to go back and like reread the manga just from like I left off on the seasons, the last season, just because I'm like I have no idea like what's going on in the future. Like now there's like flying blimps, like how the hell is there flying blimps when like like in as far as I know in this world, there's like no technology besides the ODM gear.
Yeah.
So that's again something that's like I love the fact that the show starts so small. And,
Yeah,
now
exactly.
where we're at, it's just so big. It's just like a giant, like now you have the whole world. It was just like a small section of this planet. Now it's like essentially we're dealing with the whole planet because, they're all getting attacked right now.
Dude, and thank you for mentioning that, because I know with this kind of episode that we're doing, that it's more not reaction, but it's just kind of a summary, kind of all over the place. We're just talking about the show. It's so hard to like pick all these awesome parts about the show, but that's another part of it that just kind of really made me fall in love with it, was just the whole fact that you start, like you said, you start small, right? You start in a triple walled city that the residents there have been like not prisoners, but they've been like there for 100 years, right? So you already have this like crazy idea of like, obviously we're not going back to the existence or creation of them, but you're like, yeah, what's happened in 100 years and why are they walled off, right? And us knowing like our experiences like humans, us watching other cartoons, like even like Avatar, like The Last Airbender, where ultimately, you're on top of turtles. Like, there's more to the story, and that walled city isn't just there for fun, right? And it's not just like a coincidence that it's walled. And so, yeah, it is pretty beautiful to kind of like watch the show and then like, again, get these little bits and pieces of like more and more of the story. And like you said, you end up in a completely different country in a whole different world later on, and you realize that these people are so outdated with not just the ODM gear, but like, just the way they run their city is so different compared to like the Marlians, and the next one Marley. And so later you find out that there is the rest of the world is basically more developed than they are, which kind of leads into other topics about like, why the king or the family Reese like stuck them there and all this stuff. So it's again multi layers, man. And then later when you find out what the wall is made of, so that's
no,
crazy.
I know. Like, you said it, that it's going to be impossible for us to like. There's people are going to be like, "Oh, you guys didn't talk about this, or they didn't mention that." But it's like in this world, it's so impossible because almost everything about it is a twist. Like, as you're like discovering more things, it's like we can literally talk about like just like one arc and talk about it for like the next hour. But we're just kind of moving along and just talking about like certain pieces of it. But even like when there was a time skip, and not that I'm trying to like already like move forward, but even with the time skip, like I could see like yourself, like you didn't see that coming, and for you to all of a sudden you're like, wait, there's a time skip, now we're fighting in another country, like now there's this kid Marco, and then I forgot what the other girl's name is, like what is happening though? And this is like, again, I can feel that unless you've been Gabby, it's just like like it really shocks you to be like, how the hell are we like now in a completely different world with different technology? You find out like there's all these like that pretty much like this country's holding the whole world, not ransom, but like they're holding them under control because they're the only ones that have the Titans. But as you're saying, like the world's advancing with technology that it is gonna get to the point where they gotta even start thinking like, hey, in like 50 years, like just the fact that we have Titans, that's not gonna be good enough because the world just continues to advance. So I even kind of like that about it. The fact that even if Titans were to remain, in 50 years, like people would have came up with a more creative way of like getting rid of them.
No, absolutely, man. And it's like, oh, dude, but again, another mystery, right? And it's just funny because we're definitely very back and forth. As it's the show makes you think that way. Because again, as you start like finding out new things, you go back, you're like, holy shit, like that's how it's been going on, like, or that's why it's been happening, right? So one of my coolest like things that I loved finding out about is how they create the Titans. Because remember, eventually you get to the point when you find out that the Marlians are basically taking the what is their name? They're Eldians, like the people descendant of like the Titan blood.
The Waimir? Yeah, Waimir.
Yeah. And basically, the original Titan or the anyways, but yeah, so like eventually they take the people that are no longer subordinate, that are no longer, and first of all, let's start that way. You're in Marley and you start seeing it's a very like kind of Nazi / Holocaust, like sadly, that kind of essence where the Eldians, like the people descendant of Ymir, are being held as like they're being chastised, right? They're worn the arm patches, they have the armbands, they're considered like scum, garbage, like they're disrespected, like they're not necessarily slaves, but they're definitely kind of like the low. And then later you find out that when those people are not appealing to the Marlians anymore, they get rid of them by taking them to Paradise Island, which is where like the walled city is, and they inject them and they turn them into Titans, and that's how you go back to the whole idea of like Titans showing up in this walled city, and that's like stuff like that is so like it's. I just remember every time you would hit like a big like discovery like that, I was just like what, like mind blown, like crazy.
No, and it's kind of funny because they were converting the people into Titans in order to keep the the people trapped in that area.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they ended up creating the most perfect barrier for them, because all of a sudden, when they were actually like responsible for infiltrating the city, like they couldn't do it because the city was just surrounded by Titans. Yeah. So that was even kind of cool that later on they kind of acknowledged their mistake by doing that.
Yeah. And do you remember like? So was it the reason why they were kind of afraid of Paradise Island is because they had the founding Titan, right? Like that's why,
correct?
Because that was the one Titan that ultimately can create more, or not create more Titans, because Zeke could too. But yeah, essentially it's the founding Titan, so it has more power than all of them. And I think that's probably the reason why they were more afraid of them.
Yeah, because they just wanted at the end of the day to have like their own little section of paradise. They didn't want to be bothered. They didn't want the world.
Well, they ran away, but yeah,
they because they kind of, I think I forget what his name is, the king. He pretty much said like, I don't like war. I don't want to be part of war. So then he went and he created this like paradise because he just wanted to be like with his own subjects and like not be bothered with fighting or murdering anymore. So he got tired of it. But the whole idea that like some of the Titans remain with the Marleyan people and how they put them to like pretty much like take over the planet. I think that's like really cool. And, something I love about this show is just like the foresight on some of the things, man. Like I would have never, if you have told me that the attack Titan had powers to like see into the future, like I would have been like,
oh my goodness.
like what are you talking about? Like, why would the attack Titan have powers like that? And it's just like, that's something again that it's just like, I love that meme where it's like Eren going like back in time and like telling this person to do this, like telling his dad like, hey, you got to murder this family. And he's actually the one like moving the story forward. Like I thought that was like so cool.
Yeah. As far as the anime, is that the last big like the what's it called, discovery, the reveal that we get? Yeah, it is, right? Because I remember that being the last thing that I remember that was like so significant, that you realize that you get to the point where you're having these flashbacks and you're seeing Eren's dad deciding he doesn't want to kill the Reese family, right? Because he is like, it's the dad with like all the kids, and I think he does get to the point where he's like, no, I'm not gonna do it. Like, fine, like I'm not gonna do it. And then Eren's right there, like the ghost from the future, like, hey, just do it. Just do it. Like, and that's like he fucking goes crazy, like, and ends up like eating the founding Titan and then taking that power himself. But like that was another thing. I'm like, wait, I remember watching that and being like, what? Not to mention the scene right before then too, when you have Zeke and Eren going back and forth in that little like mental universe of like who has power, right? Because I think like Eren walks in and Zeke is like bonded, like he's chained, and then like a little later he's not chained, and then Eren's chained, and then it just keeps going back and forth until eventually you find out Eren has all the power and basically to go back in time mentally and affect the past. Like that's fucking crazy, man.
No, definitely, because with Eren, like, dude, this was a character that I think in the first seasons, especially when it's like a teenager, like I just didn't like. I'm like, dude, like besides you having the Attack on Titan, that's why you're so important. Like I never really liked much about him. I thought he was a little bit spoiled, a little bit like you want to be so tough, but you're not, because Mikasa has to like literally like pick up the fights for you and defend you all the time, or come to your rescue unless you have that Attack Titan. That's where you're really useful, and like he's not the brains, because Armin's the Armin's the brains of the operation. He comes up with all the plans. But then, you get this where they move into the future and Eren grows up, dude, and it's like I will like like I had like mass love for like grown up Eren. Like I love everything about him. I love like let's just call him sexy Eren. Like I just have mass respect for everything that he's doing.
Carlos, just quoting you, sexy Eren.
I mean, yeah. But I just have mass respect with everything that he's doing, man. Because if you think about it, he's sort of doing something that he believes is part of his destiny, and there's no way to get around it. Like him, from the visions that he's had, he's like, I have to do this. This is where my story is going, and I have to continue to do all this destruction. And even though I don't want to like kill billions or millions of people, like I have to do it because I'm trying to protect my people. And I understand like why he's doing that, because essentially I think what the show's trying to show us is that war sucks, man. Like war is just like terrible, and
Absolutely.
nobody's like, it's like at the end of the day you're just fighting like people. And that's when people say like this show's not really bringing much to the table. Like, how can you say that when this show is literally showing you the how war is terrible, and at the end of the day you're just fighting human beings, and you might have different beliefs, but if you're ever breaking bread and on a table with one another, you might find out that you have more things in common than you realize. So it's just I think those are the bigger pictures that Attack on Titan does, and that's why I kind of do respect it a lot.
And I think, I mean, you're definitely right. And it kind of sucks that people get to the level of they want to live in that imaginary world where they realize, they just don't want to admit that war is a sad truth that we kind of deal with, right? But that is what the show's about. The show's about, like, basically these, well, we'll call them humans because they are humans, but overall these humans with different type of races, one that have like the bloodline of Ymir, who can, coincidentally turn into these giant ass like titans, but in reality they're still like a type of human, or they're still the same kind of type of creature. They originate from the same place, and really the whole show is about that kind of racism, or that kind of like, opposing that power, and it sucks. Yeah.
No, and I'm glad you're saying it, because I'm trying to like sugarcoat it, and I'm trying not to like spit it out.
But we're here for
I know. That's why we have this podcast. But that's what it is. Like, they're being racist, and it's freaking dumb, because at the end of the day, we're just people, and you don't. Again, if they understand Titans so well, there's like so well to like know that like, hey, people aren't just gonna magically turn into like a 9-foot Titan. There's really no reason for them to be as racist as they are towards them, but they treat them like crap, man. And some of the things
they weaponize them.
Yeah, but even the way they treat Marmions, and I mean, even when you find out like how Eren's dad lost his sister, I mean, that's fucking terrible. The idea of like soldiers took her and fed her to like multiple dogs, or like dogs ripped her apart, all because he wanted to be there for to see some blimps flying around, like that's kind of cool, man. If you're a kid, like you do want to see that. But now the dad has to like suffer with the reality that because I wanted to do this, my sister ended up dying. So it's just like, again, the whole like that almost started the whole conflict with Eren, because it's just like, if this hadn't happened, you guys hadn't killed his sister, then the father would have never tried to rebel, and then the father would have never trained Zeke to be like trying to be like also a rebel, and then Zeke would have to like betray them. So it's just like so many layers upon layers upon layers. It's insane.
Well, I mean, and that was the purpose of the Marlians, right? Like the Marlians wanted to control the Titans, and I think that's what it was. Is they were weaponizing the Titans, so they were using like the 9, or like they had 8 out of the 9 like main Titans, and they wanted to keep that power. So then to hold that power, they basically were telling any descendants of Ymir that they were garbage. And they were basically indoctrinating them and telling them, like, hey, you guys are worthless. You guys are scum. And in reality, like, dude, if I was like one of the Eldians, wouldn't you eventually think like, dude, wait, what? I can turn into, I have the possibility of turning into a giant ass like humanoid and kill you, and you don't? Like, who's really has the power? But it goes to show you, like, that is true. Like, that's how like governments work sometimes. Like, you have something very powerful, and that's what they were doing, just trying to control the power of the Titans.
Well, I think it also comes to the fact that they, like the subjects of Ymir, they know the fact that they also at one point were actually the rulers. They're the ones in control, and they were doing terrible things. So I think the fact that history gets thrown in their face a lot, like, hey, when you guys were running, things, like you guys were like murdering and killing and doing all these terrible things. So, there is a reason why you should feel fucked up about like who you are, because, you have this blood or these genes that can make you transform. And it's kind of like history, like not that history is repeating itself, but like they're using history to say like, oh, we should be shit.
And it's funny because it does remind me of even like our people, right? Like in the indigenous people, and then the Spaniards, and it's all that kind of crazy stuff. But you know what? It's funny because it just made like, when you were talking about it, I was listening to it and I thought about Naruto again. Now that I'm finally getting towards the end, think about it. Like, isn't it freaking the Sage of Six Paths mom is the one that ultimately gets the original power, and then the Sage of Six Paths ends up becoming like, creating the shinobi world, and then ultimately he has the 9-tailed beasts, which are like the 9 Titans. Like, dude, like it's just, and then the Chinchuriki are later on like kind of like chastised. Like they're like, oh, you guys are like garbage because you could potentially destroy us. We're using you as a weapon. And anyway, so another reason why like this show is so great, because it does correlate to a lot of things that, as a like people we've experienced, and then also like other animes that use like similar, like really great storytelling have similarities. But no, yeah, so dude, and then continue with that. So then obviously the Marlians do want to have the control, and then ultimately I think that's what ends up like fucking them over, because then obviously towards the end of where we're at with the actual anime, it's basically what the rumbling, and you have freaking, what is it, 1,000? How many Titans, colossal Titans are coming?
Oh, dude, I have no idea, but I just know that
Yeah.
they're pretty much destroying everything they're like crossing paths with. So it's kind of
Yeah.
sad. It's sad because I know there's kids and elderly and people that have nothing to do with, you know, what Marmins have been doing. But, you know, Eren's on this plan that's like, well, the whole world turned their backs against us, so now I'm just going to kill everybody because that's the only way that my people can really survive.
And I think that's like the biggest conflict in like season 4, right? Because in season 4, where we're at, I guess, but like the first part of it, it's all about that, right? Like, you have Zeke, who, you know, obviously eventually you find out is Eren's half brother, which is freaking awesome. Because, like, introducing Zeke, like the Beast Titan, was probably another cool moment in the whole show.
It was so crazy. It was just like out of nowhere, you see like this giant ape, and you're like, okay, like what the fuck am I watching? Why is there a giant ape? Why can't he talk? When are we gonna know like his like background?
Smart. Yeah,
he was smart, and it was just like again one of those things like. Attack on Titan does such a good job of just grabbing you with all these mysteries that to me actually pay off, because the whole idea like Zeke ended up being like Eren's brother, to me that still kind of like blows my mind, because this is like an incredible thing.
And just even in general, like his, well, I remember watching that episode of when you first get introduced to the Beast Titan, and I'm like, dude, what the F? And I remember texting you and being like, what is this? And I always send you like pictures of what I'm watching, like, dude, what the frick is this? And yeah, eventually, not even just like skipping forward to like when you find out it's his half brother, but even just the scene that really captivated me about like the Beast Titan later when he's fighting Erwin. Which is another freaking
rest in peace, my captain.
Oh my god, it's like probably one of the saddest parts of the whole like, you know, Attack on Titan. But like, you know, yeah, when the Beast Titan is fighting Erwin in the army, like, dude, he's freaking chucking like boulders, right? Like he's doing his whole baseball throws and throwing them. And I just remember like, and doesn't he chuck like he throws a horse first, doesn't he? Like at one point he throws a freaking horse.
when we first introduced him, I think he's throwing. He throws a horse at like one of the scouts.
Yeah, people. I remember seeing that and being like, this is so freaking crazy. Like, just because you already know like how crazy it is to see these giant ass like humanoids, and then you have this Beast Titan throw a freaking horse at them.
Yeah, Zeke thinks he's a god, man. I know there's that one girl that actually worships him like a god, but even though later on he tries to like downplay it, like, oh no, I'm actually on your side, blah blah blah. Like Zeke has like that god complex where it's just like, dude, like I'm a freaking 100 feet tall like Titan, and you guys are garbage, and I'm here, and you guys should bow down to me. And that's like another reason why I love the fact that he gets his ass whooped by Levi. Constantly, they're like, I wish I could just watch a show where like the whole season's like Zeke trying to outsmart Levi, and like Levi just always like one step above him just because of like how great he is physically. But yeah, that whole like I think it's one of the most like rated shows on anything. The one you're referring to where he's fighting with Erwin and in the battle, and then Levi coming and just cutting him to pieces, man, freaking incredible. I swear I watched that like a couple times every couple months.
It's still one of my favorite parts. Like when I tell people about the show now, like waiting for those parts is probably one of the most exciting things. When people actually reach back out to me and they say like, dude, what the hell? Like what's going on? Like it's so insane. But no, the whole thing with Zeke too, like, because going back into what we were talking about, like his ultimate goal is euthanizing like the freaking oh my god,
his race.
He's basically he wants to stop the production of more subjects of Ymir, and that freaking sucks. And
like that's not a good plan, man. Like that's like a Thanos kind of like, oh, I'll snap half of humanity or the people in the universe, and then things will become better. Like no, dude, like you could.
But at least with Thanos, those 50% of the people can have more children, and at this point, you're basically saying you're eliminating the race by euthanizing them and saying you're no longer able to have any more kids, which is so fucked up. Which, in comparison, Eren's plan to basically destroy the Marlians and everyone else doesn't seem as crazy, but like you said earlier, still fucked up. You still have children, innocent people that really don't. Besides kind of following their government and their country's rule, really don't have anything to really do with that fight, you know? So I think that's another part that later on, obviously, you really learn to love about the show, that conflict, right? Like ethics, like what's really better, like to eliminate a race that potentially creates these giant ass, like humanoid, like titans that can potentially destroy the world, and they hold government power, they hold power in general, or do you like kill everybody that's against that? And it's like neither of them are right.
Yeah.
And you know, so it's just another good part that, like, at least the most recent parts that we're watching right now, that's what it's dealing with, is that overall war, which is crazy, man, because there's just so much stuff in there too that's smaller. But yeah, that war is crazy.
No, like, I mean, again, I feel with Eren just because I don't think he wants to do it, man. I see the sadness in him. Like, I mean, ever since he grew up and, he was able to kiss Historia and, he kind of
Oh yeah,
saw
yeah,
what he needed to do. I kind of feel bad with him because when you look at his eyes, like his eyes have been dead. It's just like he knows he has to do like terrible things and he knows nobody else will do them. And he's just on this path of destruction. And I feel bad, man. I really feel bad. And I know there's like a scene that we either haven't seen or we will see where, he had an opportunity to maybe run off with Mikasa. It didn't happen. But I almost wish that would have happened because I wish I could have lived in a reality where Eren had a happy life. But, sadly,
yeah,
that's not where the story's going because that would be a very boring
yeah.
ending if just like he ran off with Mikasa.
Yeah,
Mikasa is a character that I found so
yeah.
cool, man.
I want to
How
talk about her.
badass she is. I thought she was so beautiful, so pretty, so like very confident. But I do see like the problems with her because I think the problems with her is that she loves Eren too much, and her character has become like, I'll save Eren, and I'm here for Eren, and I'll do anything for Eren,
Well,
and it's
she's
just kind of
bound
like,
to Aaron.
and
Yeah,
he's like, yeah, she feels like she's bound because of the whole Ackerman thing, because, like
yeah,
he saved her when, they were younger, that activated her powers. So it's just like,
yeah.
I feel like she's a great character, but I feel like the show hasn't really done much with her besides being like, hey, your whole purpose here is to like follow Eren around and be like his bodyguard and, make sure
Yeah.
you give us some like really
Oh,
cool. No, go ahead.
absolutely. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
mean, absolutely. I was just agreeing because I think, and I obviously wanted to backtrack and talk about certain characters. And I think Mikasa was one of those that, well, animation style, she was better in the first couple seasons. When the time they got to the fourth season, I'm like, what'd you do to my girl, man? Like,
Yeah.
she just didn't look, and nothing, again, obviously, this is not that type of anime, but she just didn't look the same. She looked a little bit more like, thicker, and she seemed to be more of like that lost puppy that's just following the owner around. And it's just like,
Oh,
it really
perfect.
took it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took this character that you really learned to love because she was a badass, and she knew she was loyal to her friends, and she was loyal to Eren in particular. And you learned the story about why she was, because when they were trying to like basically kill her, and Eren defended her, and then her like Ackerman powers snapped, and she came into the realization of what like her true potential is. She even if she owed, or she felt like she kind of needed to be there for Eren to always protect them, like bound to him, I think she was still pretty badass, man. Like, she was an
Yeah.
anchorman. She did some awesome things. She had some awesome fights. And then you got to the fourth season, like what we're most currently on, and it's like a lost puppy. Like, she's just following him around. Yeah, she's still fighting. She's still doing some cool stuff. It just doesn't have the same like focus on her or power. And again, without maybe going too far ahead, I've been spoiled a little bit about kind of the final part of the story, and I'm still grateful that she's still part of it, and that she's obviously one of the main parts of the ending. But in general, I'm like, damn, man, like right now, I kind of was like, dude, what happened to my girl? What happened to Mikasa?
Dude,
Yeah.
I love when they have the time skip where Eren's pretty much declaring war to the Marmions, and he's facing the Warhammer Titan. Is that what it's called? The
Mm.
Warhammer Titan,
Warhammer, yeah.
which looks so fucking cool, dude. And I like the fact that when Eren's
Awesome power.
like now is your chance to like attack Mikasa. Like, where are you, Mikasa? And like, sure enough, Mikasa just comes out of nowhere, comes with her like freaking rocket, starts like
Oh
fucking
yeah,
shit up. Dude, like, to me, that's also one of the highlights of the whole every like season. Like, when they invade Marley, and they're almost taking the war to them, because again, all this time, like, Marlians are so confident about like their status in society because like war never happens in their country. The war is always happening, either they're invading other countries or they're fighting to like get some of these titans back.
yeah,
But as far as they know, for the past 100 years, they've been like the ruling power. So the idea of like Eren coming in, infiltrating the Marmion city, and then all of a sudden, like Eren turns into the Attack Titan. His whole purpose is like, I'm here to steal the Warhammer Titan, and like, dude, that whole scene is so beautiful to me. And one of the highlights of this show is when Marco is in his Jaw Titan form, and he's like, all right, I'm here. I'm the Jaw Titan. You guys need to fear me. You guys need to run away because there's no way you guys are like stand a chance against me. And all the scouts are just going forward to him and like attacking him and like fucking him up. And he's like, I do not understand. Like, why are you guys not scared of me? Like, you guys, like, I should be your biggest fear. And it's like, I love that idea, dude, that these guys were like so high on themselves that like they were superior. And the idea that here comes these scouts, they have like no fear. They're ready to like kill him and, you know, pretty much like maybe like kidnap him so they can pass on the power to somebody else. Like, to me, that's always been like a really cool scene in the show.
And that's true. I mean, well, like, damn, it's so hard because I want to talk about like 3 different things at once. But first of all, yeah, let's talk about that scene in general when like the Warhammer's brother, who's like the leader of the Congress or the city, he's basically declaring war on Paradise, like the island, and then Eren busts out and starts, you know, destroying everything. That was pretty cool. But no, Dad, just going back to like, yeah, you know, I think that's another really good story that I really enjoyed was the Titans that were sent in for the mission to retrieve the founding Titan, right? So Rainer, the Colossal Titan, Annie, like Annie, you know, you know, like those people were probably the ones that, and that's why they end up in the same team, which obviously we'll eventually get to. But I think that's the coolest part about them is that because they infiltrated and they were basically spies to be ultimately capture Eren or the founding Titan, they lived through what those people lived, and they understood that the Eldians or the subjects of Mimir weren't real bad people. So all this thing that they were like growing up and that was indoctrinated
propaganda,
all this stuff that they like ever grew up believing, they were realizing, no, dude, these people are like us. They're us, like, you know, and they're fine and they're normal, and if anything, they're scared or they don't even know about the outside world. They're just scared of Titans. So yes, you're right. When you get to like people like Falco and the Jaw Titan, it's like he's so full of himself because he's never dealt with that. He's never like understood their like fight, their determination, their like will to like succeed. But then all these other Titans already knew that those guys can fucking fight because they were there with them like most of the fights. They really kind of worked side and side. But yeah, that was an awesome scene, man. Like that Warhammer Titan was really great. And even then jumping ahead to like where ultimately, remember, because Eren, in order to get her when she gets crystallized, like uses a Jaw Titan to be able, like, dude, that's awesome. Like, so not even talking about like Falco and his like arrogance of being like, oh, you should fear me, but then finding out that ultimately
Marco,
he becomes the catalyst to like, you know, being able to lose that. So
no, and you know, let's talk a little bit about, you know, and I promise we're gonna get to Armin for that. Anyways, like, well, you guys haven't talked about Armin, but you know, Rainer, dude, Rainer probably has to be the second most favorite one of my characters, and it's another character that you're kind of probably seeing the pattern with me. Like, I love growing up sexy Eren because he's just so sad inside, and I just want to fix him. And
I don't even talk anymore. He doesn't even talk anymore.
But I also love Rainer because that's another one that he's just so sad, so depressed. Rainer like put a shotgun in his mouth and like, you know, pull the trigger. And I feel bad for that guy, man. Like that guy's just been through so much. And, you know, his Colossal Titan, when I first saw him, I'm like, dude, there's no way like anybody could ever defeat him. Like, how do you defeat something that's just like armor throughout his whole body? Yeah, but I mean, you obviously see like, you know, Eren has a way of like going about it now, especially because he has like more powers. But I feel bad for Rainer, man. He's definitely my favorite one right now, other than Eren, just because I can see what he's trying to do. He's just at this point where he's conflicted. He's like, I understand what they're doing. I understand why my people are trying to do it. At this point, I'm just trying to save like the children. Like he's trying to like, he's very about Marco and Gabby, like trying to like show them a better future so they don't have to go to the trouble of like dealing with war, even though they already been part of war. So I do like Rainer a lot. At least that's, again, somebody that I'm rooting for, which is kind of sucks to be rooting for him and Eren when they're both on like on opposite teams. But you know, at the end of the day, it's like, you guys just go out and play and have a good time and then just shake hands at the end of it.
Well, you know whose fault it is at the end. Dude, and you're right. It's been so long since I watched this anime because I was looking up at the names, and it's Porco's the Jaw Titan.
Porco, that's what I'm saying. Like Marco's the other one, right?
Yeah, and no, Falco. Falco's the kid that eventually takes. Falco's the kid that eventually takes Porco's power. and he
Okay.
becomes the bird. The bird. Remember, like when he becomes a jaw titan, it's more of like a chicken bird, like
Yeah.
titan, which is pretty cool too. I
Like
mean,
they,
yeah,
they
but
get kind they
yeah.
get kind of loose with the jaw titan and what he looks like. So I'm like, I don't know if the bird one. It's like a
But,
especially the first jaw titan. Like she didn't really
yeah,
have anything. Like to me, that was kind of like a very pathetic, or like they didn't really know how to like design that character.
yeah.
I'm talking. I think of, her name was also Ymir. But I did not like that jaw titan. I'd like
Oh, the one who was Historia's protector, and she kind of loved her too. Yeah, I forgot about her.
Yeah, but no, I did like Porco's jaw titan was freaking awesome. Like
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind having his transformation. Which
and
I think, to my
he's pretty
understanding, he looked
cool.
like. No, go ahead. What?
No, it's like he looked pretty cool, like his
Yeah,
disability in general. Yeah.
yeah,
No, yeah, I mean, yeah, Raynar, is that his name? Yeah, Raynar, the freaking armored titan. Like, you're right. Like, he was definitely one of the ones that I liked the most. Not only because he was like this beefy, like freaking titan that was just basically so strong, but I think this is the whole story about like him. He was kind of a little bit not of a mystery, but there was other blonde characters in there. I think Annie was the one that I'm like, how did you even not know was Annie? But at
yeah.
that point, you also didn't know that those like humans were the ones that turned into these titans. So
Oh no, no
by the time you did
idea.
find out, yeah. So by the time you found out, because like the other guy, the one who turns to Colossal Titan, just to know that was a person who was part of their team to begin with. And then technically in the beginning of the anime, he's the first one that breaks into the wall. That's dude, it's just again, just
Yeah.
finding these little things out throughout the whole show are pretty great.
Dude, and if you look it up, there's like been shots early on where there's a scene where they were in trouble, and like if you look at it or freeze the frame, like Marco's like ready to bite himself to turn into
Yeah.
the Titan form. So
Yeah.
they were like, if you pay close attention, it becomes pretty obvious that Reiner and Marco, sorry, what's his name?
Porco.
Bert,
Porco.
Berthold, that they were kind of the
Uh,
colossal, and Annie, with her transformation, it just becomes very obvious
oh yeah.
as soon as you see her and her fighting style and everything. But
Yeah.
um, I did like their whole trio, and I thought it was kind of cool. I'm glad that Annie, we're gonna get more of her in kind of playing with the good guys now. So I like that
Yeah.
about Annie coming back.
Oh, that's another like cluster F of things that happen at the very end, right? Like, because now at this point you have the Jaegerists who believe that Eren was like the
Yeah,
right one, and he's the one that he should go destroy everything in the world, and then you have obviously his like old crew that was like, dude, what is he doing? Like, he can't kill everybody and stuff like that. And then you have Zeke, who at this point obviously is irrelevant, but like he was still trying to euthanize everyone, and you have a lot of these characters like combined. Like that's basically where we left off, right? Like they all kind of
yeah,
like get together and they're all gonna go try to stop Eren, because Eren's like fucking turned into this giant ass
yeah,
titan at this point, and it's like crossing the sea to go kill the Marlians.
yeah.
But no,
And I
I
feel
mean,
bad.
even then I didn't expect all that. Yeah.
Dude, I feel bad for my boy Levi, because at this point, the only thing that's
Let's talk about Levi. We haven't talked about Levi. Yeah.
yeah, Armin can wait. Armin can wait. We can keep
Mhm.
pushing him a little bit forward. No, dude, like Levi, like at this point, what's keeping him alive is just his whole will that he will be the one to kill Zeke. Like, if
Yeah.
like to he sees that Zeke is dead, like I don't think Levi can die or will let himself die.
Yeah.
And I love that about him, because at this point, like you see him, like he can't. I don't think he can even use his ODM gear. He's missing probably an eye. There's probably like ribs broken.
Yeah.
Honestly, he might not, like, by the time we're done with this show, though, whether he's alive or dead, like he's just a broken man. But again, the whole like Zeke took what's his commanders we talked about earlier,
Erwin.
Irwin. Zeke kill Irwin, and he's just like on a such like a I'm going on a vengeance journey to get my revenge. So I like that about him. But Levi has always been so cool, man, since like the very beginning. Even though he's like a very short man, they always have made it very clear that he's just like the one that you don't want to mess with. And I loved
Yeah.
everything about him, including his like backstory.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, finding out that he's an Ackerman too, and then later I think you meet his cousin Kenny or something like that. It started with a K.
Uncle,
Yeah,
yeah, Kenny, his
yeah,
yeah,
uncle. And you're just like finding out more about the family, but in general, like, dude, he's such a fucking badass. And I think that's one of those things that you're watching the show and you're seeing, like we talked about from the beginning, like the ODM gear, how crazy it is. It's like a ballistic type blade with like kind of shoots grapples, and it's all doing all this crazy stuff. But like, you talk about someone who's mastered their like weapons, so their tools, like that was Levi, man. Like the way
yeah.
that he fights, like in general, like any of the Titans is freaking amazing. You have that scene where he's fighting Zeke in the forest, like before he like snaps and does his like what Zeke does his like, oh my god, creating the Titans.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because everybody
Levi
else
that
drinks
fight.
the
Yeah,
wine. Yeah.
yeah, and like Levi's fight with that too, like he's like freaking flying in there, spinning in circles like around his arm and like cutting him up, and like you just know that this guy has to be more than just normal human. And again, you find out that because he's an Ackerman, he has like this weird like power bond to the royal family or some
Yeah.
sort of thing. But anyways, yeah, dude, it's like he's so awesome. I was kind of really sad at the end when he does kind of not get defeated, but he does get injured so bad that he's incapacitated for like the most recent episodes that we've been watching. But
But
yeah, Zeke hates him though. I remember the last thing is like, I just can't get rid of him. Like I just can't get rid of him. What the heck?
with Zeke, I mean, think about it. Levi had him at a point where Zeke has this whole grand scheme of, hey, my big plan is to, be able to touch Eren, and then we're gonna create a world where we can't, like my species cannot, or the subjects of white meat won't be able to reproduce going forward. And think about it, though, like he pretty much Levi had him, and he got to the point where like, dude, like this dude's never gonna let me go. He's gonna probably murder me in a terrible way, or feed me to one of his comrades so they can turn into his Titan, and he would rather kill himself. Hence why he pulled that bomb that Levi had put out. So it's just like, it's so crazy that Levi got him to that position where this guy was like, dude, I'd rather die and maybe possibly take you with me because like I've given up on killing you. You're just such a force to be dealt with. And going back to Levi and Kenny, even the fight where Kenny's kind of chasing them and Levi is doing the ODM gear and they're traveling around the town. Like, to me, that's been some of the best animation that I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
And I just think it's so cool, man, because at that point, like, again, you're kind of like, since the beginning of the show, you've been told that the giants or the Titans are the ones you need to fear. But now to kind of get a little bit more into like, The Last of Us, where it's like, sometimes it's not the monsters you have to fear, but the people. And it definitely got to the point where it was kind of, now we're fighting other people because they're kind of behind the whole conspiracy with the ruler of that kingdom. So it's just like, I like the idea of like, them fighting people, and you definitely see that it was just kind of like Kenny brought the best out in Levi, because if you didn't have Levi, there's probably nobody else that could have gone against Kenny, because Kenny also was just very experienced, and he seemed like somebody that, you would struggle to like deal with.
Yeah, and I mean, and that Kenny was part of the military police. So yeah, like you said, there was like the whole underlying that they're not only fighting the Titans, they're ultimately fighting also like the military police, because at this point too, like everyone's involved in this fight. No one knows who to trust. No one knows who is right. But yeah, I think that scene with like Uncle Kenny got introduced, and you just again, you just know he's like a badass and all this stuff, and then. That was pretty cool too, like that, just seeing that his like group, I guess, is like oh my god, his team that followed him, they were more trained to kill humans. So then you already know the military had been working with another team to basically develop like ODM gear that was specifically for human fighting, not just Titan fighting. That was pretty cool to see. And then ultimately, like obviously Levi and Kenny just being able to kind of hear more about that story was pretty good. But no, man, that's the stuff with those guys. I'm like, I the more and more you find out about them, like I really hope that Levi and the rest of the series gets more. And again, you read the manga, so like again, I just been spoiled to some of the ending stuff, but I'm not sure what happens to him, and I'm kind of really curious to see. And hopefully it's like something good, and at least he gets a little bit more of just not being injured and not just being kind of laying on the bedside, waiting for something to happen.
No, man, definitely. I think you're going to get one more beautiful scene, or maybe possibly two of them. But no, his story is definitely not over with. And again, when you were talking about the scenes where they're fighting these military people, if you think about it, like at that time, Eren's group, like the scouts, like they had so much trouble like taking another human live because they were just so used to always killing Titans. But I think now, when we're, going back to like them fighting Marmion, like they have no trouble like killing another human being. And again, it's kind of like the show's doing this thing about like war, where like maybe in the beginning, like a soldier is hesitant to like kill somebody like up front, but like, the more they do it, the more you become proficient at it, and just not giving a fuck if because it's like at the end of the day, it's war, and you're trying to survive and come back home to your family. So it's just like this show just sprinkles so much like things into you that really gets you like thinking about like, man, like it is terrible. Like what else as human beings are capable of doing.
Yeah, yeah. And I know it's just because we're near the end. Let's get back to Erwin because my
Yeah.
biggest question too, and I think this is one thing that everybody thinks about when they watch the show or read the manga, like who should it have been? Should it have been Erwin or Armin that got
Okay.
that syringe, right? Like,
Dude, I agree with everything that Eren said when he was at the table with him and, Mikasa. And like, he pretty much said, like, Eren, you're like been doubting yourself. You're no longer the person you used to be. You used to be like able to come up with plans. Now you've kind of become useless. So I will say that at the point where we're at, what they've shown us of what Erwin has done with the Colossal Titan and like his, the ability for him to like come up with plans, like it has gone down and kind of sucks because, like in the beginning, he was somebody that would get them out of trouble. But again, as somebody that I've read the manga, I can say that there is going to be a little bit more of light at the end of the tunnel with his story. So for me, I'm biased, so I can definitely say that the right decision was made by giving it to Armin rather than Erwin. Yeah. But I do see that if I hadn't read the manga, and I would be like, dude, like, definitely
Erwin all the way.
Erwin all the way, because he had all the charisma, he had the support,
the experience.
Yeah, and I mean, I would have liked to, like, kind of like how Marvel's doing the, the show where it's just like, what if? Like, I would have liked to have see a story with like, what if, Arwen, oh my God, what's his name?
Erwin.
What if Erwin would have gotten the Colossal Titan powers? Like, what would have gone forward? How would the show have changed or the story changed? But, sadly, we're not going to get that. But I mean, how do you feel? How do you feel? I'm guessing you're more Erwin?
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously, because like I said, almost acting like I don't know what happens at the end. Erwin would be the practical, like made most sense decision to make him into the Titan. He's had the experience. He was, he kind of already had in general. He was a very tactical leader, and he had that going for him. He already had like the followers. He had everything, right? As far as like Armin, he was smart. But Erwin was smart too, right? And so, I mean, like once you kind of know what happens at the end, you ultimately know that, yes, Armin becoming the Titan was probably like the most beneficial thing to the storyline because Erwin probably wouldn't have that same type of power over Eren. Damn, so many Warren's names.
I know, no. That's why I'm like struggling over here.
But for real, like you know that Erwin wouldn't have the same effect that Armin would have had at the final end. I know you know what I'm talking about. So it's like without getting too much into that. But yeah, no, I mean like Erwin would have been it, man. And I feel like that would have changed a lot of things because if you would have had Erwin take that injection and he would have became the Titan, then Levi would have been like in a little bit better place, and maybe his survival would have been longer, and maybe like more people would have rallied behind Erwin and said, hey, we just got to stop Eren altogether. And it would have been straight to like stopping him. What if they stopped him? I don't know. But at the same time, it just would have seemed the most practical, most reasonable decision, man.
Because similar to like the Jaegerists, like they revolted, I think that would have happened, but it would have happened with Erwin's group. Because I think Erwin would have also seen like, hey, these higher ups, like they have no idea what to do. Their whole plan is probably to like try to take Eren's power and give it to somebody else so they can kind of control that person even more. Yeah. Or even with Historia, I think like there was a lot of talks about like, oh, what are they going to do with Historia? Or like they're trying to get Historia pregnant so that they can kind of get rid of Historia or like, so it's just like, so like those higher ups, they already kind of like, I didn't like what they were kind of like the way they were going about protecting their world. So no matter what, I assumed there would have been some kind of revolution. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen it where like Erwin was alive and, like, Armin, he's cool, but I did like that part where he turned into the Colossal Titan and he pretty much did like an atomic bomb with their naval ship. Yeah. That was pretty cool. But even so, he's very sad about that in the press, the fact that he killed all these people. So I just wish that at this point, like he would be more of a mentality like, hey, it's war and there's some things that need to happen, whether I like it or not. And because I mean, clearly millions of people are currently at the point where they're dying. So it's like Armin, you gotta like wake up, man. Eren's your enemy at this point, and we need your power because, I mean, his form will be very beneficial to him because it's just like, dude, how big is that tag titan? Or just that whole like idea that, hey, I can land on his neck and explode myself. Like, dude, that's like such a good ability, and I think that's probably even what their plan going forward is going to be with Armin.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. I think I love knowing the potential of the Titans and what they can do and how they will benefit the story. Like, I know as Eren is taking over everything, like, he's probably the most ultimate form at this point, right? Because he's like, at this point where we left off in the anime, he's turned himself into that giant ass ribbed, like, freaking hovering thing where he's following all the rest of the Colossal Titans and the Rumbling.
Hmm.
So yeah, just to be able to have someone with the same, not the same amount of power, but like, almost higher up their size. You have to be a colossal titan to even get there to impact them. But again, for having like the ending spoiled, but not seeing the actual story come to fruition, I'm excited to see all that, man. I'm excited to see like Armin in there, like being the colossal titan. I'm excited to see the team, like Mikasa and all these guys, like coming together to really fight Eren. Because at the end of the day, like who's become the bad guy? Kind
Yeah.
of freaking Eren, right? Because ultimately, no one should want the destruction of any innocent people in general. And I don't know. I think that's where I'm at with it. Where I'm just kind of like, dude, everything that's happened to this point, awesome. Now I'm kind of to see what they all do together using the powers that they do have. It wasn't Erwin, it's Armin. So what is Armin gonna do now to like really basically step up and be like, hey, I was the right decision. I'm here. Let's freaking go fight. But yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm excited to see what
No,
happens.
that's why this whole thing that they've kind of screwed up the whole final season, part 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I hate it, man, because it's just like I want to be able to get hyped up and understand that there is an ending, that's about to happen. Even though I
Yeah,
know how the story's gonna end, like I'm still like thinking like, okay, you're coming back next week. What is it, 5 episodes, and then you're gonna take another 6 months break, and then you're gonna release another 5 episodes. Like, oh, come on, man! Like people have been
yeah,
waiting for this. Like if you have it ready, if you don't have it ready, then maybe I can understand. But if you have it ready, like stop it, like stop doing this. Like people have been very
yeah,
hyped up for this show. I'm still kind of shocked that they didn't do the whole movie approach to it, sort of like Demon Slayer, with the
yeah.
Mugen Train. But if they're not gonna do that, that's fine. I think it would have made a lot of sense to go with a movie route approach for the final few
Because we're
episodes,
that
just
close
because
to the end. Yeah,
dude, because it gets so crazy, dude. It gets so crazy, and my concern is that the budget's not gonna keep up with it, or they're not gonna be able to animate it as well as they should. Because I'm telling you,
yeah,
you're gonna see things on screen that are gonna make you like pause the screen and like start like looking at every inch, and you're gonna see so many TikToks, and you're gonna see so many like, let me know more about this, let me know about that, and I can't wait for that.
yeah.
And I know we're gonna be talking about as the new season comes out, we're probably hopefully gonna review every episode. So even if we didn't talk about anybody specifically now, I know when the show comes
Oh
back,
yes.
like that's gonna be our opportunity to like, hey, let's talk about Connie, let's talk about this person,
Oh
let's talk
yeah,
about them in more
Connie, his
detail.
mom. Like,
Yeah.
um,
So like I'm not too worried. Like Gene's been an interesting one just because like he's always been I just want to have a good life and a good wife, and he's been chasing after Mikasa even though he's never really gonna. I mean, if he does get her, it's probably gonna be out of pity. But he's been kind of like thirsting for Mikasa since the very beginning.
oh man, there's just so many people like Sasha. We never talked about Sasha, and then all that shit that happens with her, and yeah, I mean I think that's what I'm really excited for. Like excited for is the new part coming out, and then us being able to talk about it like more on a consistent basis, and then
Yeah,
go back and revisit everything that we weren't able to talk to about today. Because dude, it's a great
it's a
story. It's a great story, man. But yeah, like you said, we're so close to the end that it would just be nice if they just kind of finish it off with a giant ass movie, beautiful animation, like just kind of get to the point instead of hopefully it doesn't get dragged out too much. But either
no
way, I'm
man.
excited.
No, yeah, man, and I'm glad we did this because again, my whole thing was just like, hey, we're not gonna sit here for 3 hours and like tell you everything that happened and tell you how like some of us had to wait like 8 years to find out what the hell was in the freaking basement. Like
Oh
we were all
goodness, the
like
basement.
that.
Yeah,
That thing kills me, man. How long we waited to find out what was in the basement? I mean, the payoff was great. So
yeah,
so
yeah.
this was definitely like at the village kind of situation. You find out there's a bigger war out there, but
Those twists.
those twists.
Yeah,
But no, I think we'll get more of an opportunity to like really lay down our thoughts about like this whole like some of these characters and really express ourselves about how we feel about them. So I'm not too worried about that. Because again, at the end of the day, I just wanted to sit here with you and like just say how much we love the show, how much appreciation I have for it, how much I love like the community around it, and just because something is being successful and it's great and people talk about it shouldn't mean you hate it. I understand that Attack on Titan normally gets all the awards and all the recognition, but hey, think about it. The more people get introduced to an anime, the more we get anime later on, because it's just like there's more of a thirst for it. So if somebody can say like, hey, Attack on Titan, maybe let's say a movie did come out, and hey, this Attack on Titan movie that, you know, we didn't expect it to make big numbers, all of a sudden made 100 million worldwide or something, like it does get Hollywood thinking like, hey, how can we adapt more stories? Like there's a reason why Bleach came back. Bleach came back because I think like, you know, there was probably like a thirst for it, you know, then they got somebody like me to come back and watch it. So it's just, you know, again, I'm excited for the stories they're going to tell, and I'm excited for what's going to happen with the final season. So hopefully we get to talk about that, man, with great detail.
Yeah, man, I'm here for the journey. So I'm excited for that to come out and then get right on it. So, you know, I'm really excited to have been able to talk about this because, again, it's probably one of the ones that got me back into anime, back into just the storytelling of all of it. And it's still probably one of my favorite ones. Like when I am able to recommend it to people, I still recommend it. It's a great story. I think in general, there's just like so many great surprises. And like you said, there's a lot of payoffs. And even to where we're at the point, you know, I'm still enjoying it. I'm still waiting where the suckers are waiting for all the freaking third, fourth, fifth, like final parts, whatever they give us, man, I'll be here. So happy to be sharing it.
Oh, and I know we're gonna get hit with the new season of Demon Slayer soon, so I'm like, oh my god! And like they've already set the animation for that's gonna go up to another level, which you know, we'll see. But I think that's another one that hopefully we'll talk about in the future. We'll kind of do like similar to this, and kind of have a recap of the last two seasons. But yeah, thanks a lot, Ramon. I really appreciate you taking the time. You have a good night.
Always a pleasure. Yeah, thank you, man.
Thank you.